everybody online. You didn't hear me explaining that we were having technical problems because we were still having technical problems. So I just want to say welcome to you guys. Thank you for bearing with us in this. I think we've got it fixed for now. And so we will continue with our program. We're going to do a panel this evening with a couple of folks who've gone through closed group with us, just so you guys can hear from what they've learned. And I think you'll enjoy the time. And then we'll get into our small groups later. But for now, we're going to continue with this. So I've just got some questions that we're going to walk through with you guys. And I guess we'll just keep going in the same order. And you guys answer how you feel is appropriate, right? And so the first question, you guys get to think about this as they answer, right? First question, what did your marriage look like before coming to reengage?
Go ahead.
Our marriage was good. Can you hear me? Okay. Our marriage was good, but I can't say that it was great, although we'd been married at that time for 40 years, just one day at a time. We all had what everybody says everybody has. You know, we have problems, we had issues, we had concerns, we had things that almost drove us to the brink, but still nothing that would jeopardize that 40 years. I mean, that's a long time to invest in each other. We'd both been married before. We didn't want to, repeat the same problem, issues that we had before and make the same mistakes. So we had these issues, but the problem was we didn't know how to correct them. We kept doing the same things over and over again. We kept aggravating each other. We kept messing with each other's head. We kept playing these crazy games that you go through. We felt like we had to win and somebody had to lose, and that's just even crazier than you can imagine. So our marriage wasn't bad, and from some of the experiences that we've heard other people share, we really had a pretty good situation. We just didn't really even know it. So we weren't grateful for what we had, and we weren't committed enough to try and change things and make it as good as it could be. So that's one reason we came to reengage. So, and I think it's helped us quite a bit.
Our marriage was probably 4 or 5. It was real rocky at times and a lot of pointing fingers at each other and blaming each other for what we thought was the problem. Not really knowing a solution, just knowing we didn't want it to be our fault. You got anything on that?
I would say that we resulted in divorce a lot. We didn't have as many years poured into it, and we kind of at one point thought that maybe our kids would be happier if we were divorced. We were very short-tempered, and like you said, we pointed fingers a lot. It was his fault in my eyes, and it was my fault in his eyes, and so it was definitely different than it is now.
So, two couples with kind of different places, but both, it sounds like, with a desire to improve, right? That's awesome. That sets up the next question that I have for you guys. So what drew you to reengage? And in that, what made you commit to the closed group? And let me explain in case there's someone who's here for the first time. So we start every week with a large group meeting, and then we break into small groups. And when you're ready, we move into what's called a closed group, which is a 16-lesson curriculum. These couples have both gone through that. That's what they've been talking about. And so just kind of talk through that. What drew you initially to reengage, and what made you want to get into the closed group part?
Well, I heard a presentation at church about reengage, and I was very interested. I thought it would be good for both of us and would be something that we could do together to grow in Christ. I asked Bill if he would go, expecting him to say no, but he said yes. And so we came that very first night, and we walked out, and I said, "So are we coming back?" And he said, "Absolutely."
Yeah, they're nice people here. Yeah, we came, and after listening to the presentation, I realized that what I needed was a structure. One of the things they tell you is You can't talk outside the circle. You can only change the person that you are. You can't change, when you try and change somebody else, change this person sitting next to me, it's not going to work. It's going to cause problems. So there's a circle, an imaginary circle, and you stand inside this circle and you can talk about whoever's in that circle with you. And there's only one person that can fit in that circle, and that's me. So we needed structure. We needed to know what to do. At least that's the way I felt, and I'm glad that we continue to come.
Honestly, our kids, we wanted our marriage to be better for our kids. We came in here with no expectations other than to make our marriage good enough for our kids. But as far as we went, and when a closed group came, we decided that it would be a good time for us to spend together and get a community of people who could support us in something we knew we needed to grow in.
Sweet. Well, you guys have mentioned, Bill, you mentioned there a little bit of one of the things that stood out to you, right? And so I'm just curious for the other three of you, what is something that stood out in the curriculum, in the closed group that you're like, oh, wow, and kind of made an impact on you?
Well, for me, it was sort of the same thing that Bill said, focusing on myself and what I needed to change. And this process of learning to change yourself is what's going to create the behavior change in the other person. And as we went through Reengage, we both began to see that as I changed my behavior toward him, his behavior toward me changed, and vice versa. I think one of the best parts of the program was answering those questions individually and then meeting together as a couple before the meeting and talking about the answers. I think we were more honest with each other than we'd ever been. And there were some tears, and there were some acknowledgments and some behavior changes.
Yeah, he keeps stealing my answers. I think I made fun of the hula hoop in the middle of the room every time I walked in. But as we continued, it definitely was something that stood out to us because, like I said, we were finger pointers. So I quit making fun of it eventually, but I did. It was something that really stood out to me.
Yeah, and I liked how it started off real slow, kind of easy going, and you was able to make fun of the hula hoop, but then after 3 or 4 weeks in, you realize you need to get in the hula hoop.
Sometimes we had to be reminded to get in.
Yeah, and it was an easy little thing to joke with your partner about. Anytime you felt like she was pointing fingers at you, you could always be like, you need to get in your circle.
It was a nicer way.
Yeah, it was a nicer way, and it made everybody re-inflict what was working on.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's an actual orange, almost small one-person hula hoop, right, that we use as a visual. Apparently that works, so we'll keep doing that. That's awesome. Was there a particular lesson? So there's 16 lessons that you go through, and Carol, you explained it well, that you answer questions on your own, right, and then you come together as a couple and talk through it. Was there a specific lesson for you? For me, I know one of the things that stood out for me, and if this is yours, like, please expound on it, right? I'm not stealing it from you. But the lesson on expectations really kicked my booty, in that I had all these expectations for my wife, Karen, but I don't ever tell her them. And then how can I expect that she'll live up to those expectations if we're not talking about it, right? Was there one lesson or two lessons that stood out to you guys that was like, ooh, game changer?
Well, I have to say that the expectations one was toughest for me. I always thought that this lady could read my mind. I mean, they're supposed to, right? But it was very eye-opening to realize that you're sitting there thinking that she's going to do something that you want her to do, act the way that you want her to act, say the things that you want her to say, and she has no clue what you're talking about, what you're thinking about. She's not a mind reader, even though she thinks she is. But, it's just the cause of so many conflicts, so many disappointments, so many angry situations. It's just, Yeah, that was tough for me.
I think the hardest one for me was the lesson on grace. Grace looks like not focusing on the faults of your spouse. And I think for many years I focused on his faults and not my responsibility for what was going on.
So it's kind of funny when Brooke sent me the questions, we were talking through them and we both had the same answer. And I don't remember what the title of the lesson was, but it was one that talked about our past. And we had never sat down and thought about how our past could affect our marriage. We kind of just started our marriage where it started, and that was where it started. And so in the, where was I going? So sitting down and realizing that not only his past had an impact on our marriage, but my past had an impact on our marriage, and we were still holding on to things from our past. I think that's where the most tears and the most honest conversations came out for us, is sitting down and realizing that our marriage did not start on our wedding date, but far, far before that.
You're awesome. That's great. Well, for you guys, as you look at the lessons and the principles and that you learned, what were the ones that were most difficult to put into practice? And what were the ones that maybe you found, oh, we nailed that, like we had that right? Just share a little bit what you learned in that with everyone.
The most difficult one for me was extending grace and forgiveness. It's hard to be gracious when you think someone has wronged you, when you think that someone has mistreated you, when you think that somebody has deliberately tried to injure you mentally. And that's very hard for me. I'm not a very tolerant person in that regard, but you have to realize that you're on the same team. We're not enemies. And it just was very difficult for me to say to myself, you need to forgive this lady, even though I'm the one that probably made the mistake. You have to be willing to forgive and forget. So that was difficult for me.
Mine was brokenness and humility. I'm a very strong-willed person, and I started out in this marriage believing that I was right and I knew what was best and what should be done. As Shannon always says, I did what I did because I wanted what I wanted, and I wanted my way. And it took me a long time to come to the realization that I had to change that behavior. And my change started years ago when I took a course here at Southern Hills called How People Change. That was the beginning of my change journey. And it's been a slow journey, believe me, but I'm just going to continue to work on it.
So for me, it was the brokenness and humility too. That's why I pointed fingers. I was right. And if he would have done it my way the first time, we wouldn't have been in that predicament, no matter what it was. It's still something I have to step back to today and say, I'm not always right, or maybe I am, but I should go about it a different way. But as far as the easiest, I don't know if there was an easy chapter necessarily. If you were being honest with yourself, I think we struggled through most of them, to be honest with each other and to figure out where we needed to go.
Yeah, I think the most difficult one was the giving grace and expectations, because I always expected her to see my way, and then I was not so easy on giving grace. And the easiest one, I mean, yeah, there was no easiest. The hardest thing was just coming here to begin with, getting taught to come in. But it all flowed really well, and once you opened up more, it all went really good.
So coming was the hardest part, but look, here you are. You've gone through it. Now you're back doing a panel.
Let her convince me to start.
Bet you never thought you'd be doing this, did you? That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing. One of the things I love about Reengage and getting to the closed group, which really is the meat of this ministry, right? It's where you get to really dig deep inside yourself and look and go, oh, God is saying I should live this way. Am I doing that? Right. And so I love hearing where people learn those hard lessons. But I know you guys, right? And I would say, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I would say learning those hard lessons has been one of the best things for your marriage. And so I'm excited that you guys have gotten to walk through that and see that. And even though all of it was hard, right, you're in a better place now than you were when you started.
It was well worth it.
Yeah, well worth it. That's great. That's awesome. Well, let's keep talking about closed group and tell us what you like most. So we've talked about different lessons and that kind of thing, but there's a lot more than just the lessons when you're in a closed group. So what was the thing or two that you like most about being in that closed group, learning those lessons with other people?
I guess the thing that I like the most about it is when you're in a closed group, they become your support group. You meet with them every week. They get to know you intimately. They know your problems. They know your expectations. They know what makes you tick. And they are there with you to lead, guide, direct, support, uphold, uplift, and they become good friends. So it's just, it's a very neat group of people that we've become a part of now.
I don't believe any of the groups are formed by coincidence, and I believe it was no coincidence that we waited until the time that we did to start our closed group. I think the trust that develops is what leads to the disclosures and the sharing that leads to the growth. I think that's the key to the whole thing. Our group was so close together and remained such good friends that we now have our own D groups. The guys have a D group and we have a D group.
You don't want to go first? Yeah, I'd have to second that. The community, we made some of the best friends that we've ever had out of our closed group. We're actually in our closed group leaders life group as well now. So that's pretty cool. We enjoyed having a place where we could share and it wasn't scary and we didn't think it was going to get told or said. And it was judgment free and it was truly just true support for each other when we were in that room talking about whatever the lesson was that week. And the guys did make a D group out of our closed group. I think the girls are just, I don't know what we're doing. We're just busy. I'm not sure. But they did. And I think it's great because they've learned how to be leaders. And, he said he never thought he would be standing here, but he's also leading that D group. So it's been a definitely growth for us.
She's learned to read you well, right? She knows what you're going to say. That's awesome. Well, cool. I know community is a big part of the closed group because you're one of the things I love. So I used to counsel a lot of couples, right? And marriage counseling and that kind of thing. And now I push people to re-engage. I'll still meet with you. We talk through, but I'm going to suggest you come to re-engage because, and here's why, and you guys just explain this. If it's just me and a couple sitting together and we're going over God's truth, that's great. But if it's you as a couple sitting with 2, 3, 4, 5 other couples, all seeing that it's the same truth that you all need and you're all struggling at different times in understanding how to live that out, and you're empowering each other and encouraging each other in the process. Wow. I mean, that's amazing to be a part of that. And so for me, that's one of those key things that I love about this ministry and this model. I'm glad you guys got to experience that. Well, how does your marriage look different now after you've gone through re-engage, after you've experienced some of the things we've talked about? And how has your perspective changed on marriage or your marriage in particular?
I think our marriage looks different in that we're both aware of the traps and pitfalls that are out there, the mistakes that we made in the past. We now know how to avoid some of the negative things that led us in the wrong direction. one of the things that was interesting to me to focus on is that in every marriage there's a third party, and the third party is Jesus Christ. And I never thought of it that way. But when you consider that there's another party that you have to please and that you have to deal with, I think it changes everything.
Reengage has definitely changed our marriage. And I think just coming together to this program and studying God's word and growing in Christ with other Christ followers is what has made the big difference. But I would also say that we have learned a new language, the language of reengage. Sometimes all it takes is one or the other of us looking at the other and going, reengage, and it stops. Or I'm going to give you grace now, or, don't be a weenie. Just some of the language in and of itself just stops what might have become an argument in the past, which is really awesome.
I think our marriage looks a lot better now after going through reengage. Just as she was saying, any little certain word can bring up something and stop an argument that would have been drug out for days before. I'm really thankful that we come through reengage.
I think my favorite part about coming through reengage is not that our marriage looks different, but our household looks different. Our children notice and point things out, especially as they were changing. We have a 6-year-old and they know way more than you think. And so her pointing things out and saying things was just, really made us keep pushing forward and realizing we were making a difference, not just in our marriage, but in our family. And as far as my perspective, I think, we threw divorce out a lot in the first year of our marriage. It was almost like we wasted money on a wedding because we were going to get divorced within the first 6 months. And I don't think that's an option now. I think going through reengage and seeing how things are possible to get better, or there's an answer to these things, definitely helped us in changing the way we look at things and answer to each other.
I think personally, I can look at both of your marriages and see a difference in you guys from when you first showed up to where you are now, right? I'm not going to rate your marriages. Don't worry. I'm not going to do that. I'll let you guys decide where you fall on a spectrum there. But I will say this, isn't it neat how, as you guys are using reengaged terminology, as you're talking through and that kind of thing, isn't it neat that honestly it has nothing to do with reengaged why you changed, right? It has to do with, Bill, just what you were talking about. That's the beauty of Christ, in that when we learn to surrender to him in things as simple as how to be a spouse, right? I know that's not necessarily simple at times, but the idea of being a spouse is very simple. In being a parent, in whatever, when we surrender to him and learn to live out of his calling on us, learn to let him change who we are, learn to let him drive how we walk through marriage, raising a family, life, work, etc. Man, it's good. It's good. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, and you guys are both examples of that. Well, if someone were to ask you, why should we attend reengage, right? So they've heard you talk about it, they've seen the difference that's been made, and how cool that your kids have noticed the difference. Man, that's just awesome. I'm super excited for them and for you guys as you move forward, and how God's going to bless your family in that, right? If someone were to ask, hey, I've seen this difference. Tell me about reengage. Why should we go? What benefits would you describe to them? Why would you encourage someone to be a part of reengage?
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think it's the same thing in every relationship. No matter what it is, there are communication problems, there are unmet expectations, there are any number of things that can threaten any type of relationship, not just marriage. I mean, I actually believe that people who are considering getting married should go through something like this because it helps, prevent a lot of the issues and problems they're going to have down the road. And it may cause them to, think about things before they jump off the cliff and jump into something that they don't want to get involved with. But I just think that it's a relationship issue. You want to have the best relationship that you can, and this is preventive maintenance here that we're talking about.
I agree. I think every married couple in the world should go through reengage. And I know there's a program for couples who are engaged, and hopefully we'll have that here at Southern Hills one of these days. But I think the biggest thing is the opportunity as a couple to come together with other believers to study the word. What does God have to say about marriage, and what should a godly marriage look like?
So, what a wonderful feeling it is to have a disagreement and it be okay, and it not end up in divorce. So everyone is going to have an issue. Like they said, we're not perfect. We're still sinners that married each other. So we're going to have issues, but if issues under control. It's just so much different. So it's nice to know how to handle those issues and where to go. And for a long time, we just pushed them to the side and said, we'll do the same thing. And it reoccurred. So if you ask me why you should attend, it's to fix the way you handle things, to be in a disagreement and still be happy and still feel love for that person instead of wanting to walk away. I'm hard to live up to. I'm sorry.
No, all three are really hard to live up and follow. But I think if somebody asked me why, I think they should attend Reengage. I think the groups and the bonds that you can have with other believers and seeing that they struggle with the same problems you struggle with, and just knowing you have people to back you and help you get through it.
Well, thank you guys for being here and sharing tonight. And I'll give you a second if there's something else that you want to add that maybe we haven't covered in the questions. It's okay if you don't, but I want to give you that opportunity. Good? You guys good? Ronald, sure? Awesome. Well, hey, let's give our couples a round of applause. And wow, I don't know how, if this is your first time, I think this is pretty cool that you guys get to sit and listen to these folks as they've gone through it, right? And I don't know, for me, I don't know how you couldn't want to be a part of what they've experienced. For you guys online, if there's someone new for the first time, I hope this has encouraged you as well. What we offer here in person, we also offer online for you. And so just to clarify one thing, we do have a way for those who are engaged for premarital counseling. And we go through a book series. It's not the program that Watermark offers that you were referring to, Carol, but we do have a way, and we do encourage them to go through that. And it's a really cool book, and the title of each chapter is Jesus at the Center of, and then it goes into a lot of different issues that, finances and families, right, and communication and things like that. So touches on a lot of those same issues like you guys were saying. So if you know someone who is engaged and needs to go through that, they can email me and we'll get it started. I'm starting with a couple this week, actually. I'm excited to do that with them. But the way you benefit most from being a part of Reengage is by taking that step and getting to the closed group, right? And so if this is your first time You're going closed group. Wait, I'm just showing up. I don't even know if I want to do this again. And I understand that. I just want you to think about it, because the closed group is such an incredible opportunity to walk alongside of other people, looking at God's truth and how it applies to your life.